What's up, guys? Chris here with another exciting episode of the Escape from Alcatraz vlog. Today, I'll be talking about the run portion of the triathlon, and that'll end the three-part series on the swim, bike, and run portions of the triathlon. Before we get started today, I actually have a race update that came from the Escape from Alcatraz organizers. They've been sending out weekly emails to get people ready for the triathlon. So, what I have here is an update on the wetsuit requirement. So usually wetsuits are optional at races, and people generally choose to wear them because it makes you more buoyant and hydrodynamic and makes you a lot faster in the water. But some people are just hardcore and go out there in literally just a Speedo and swim faster than the people in the wetsuit sometimes. But for the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon, it is now wetsuit mandatory. So wetsuits are now mandatory for this year's Escape from Alcatraz triathlon in accordance with USAT, that's the United States Association of Triathlon regulations, and due to the year's extended heavy weather conditions, wetsuits cannot exceed 5 millimeters of thickness. Additionally, gloves are now allowed, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you have to wear a wetsuit now because of the weather, which means that the swim is going to be extra hard, which it is already extra hard, so now it's going to be extra, extra hard. Awesome. Water temperatures are expected to be cooler, and training in cold water is highly recommended. And this week's update from the Escape from Alcatraz organizers was actually about the bike. So they are saying that there is no advantage to riding a triathlon or time trial bike on this particular course, which is what I was planning to use. Aero bikes may look cool. They definitely look cool. But you can still look cool and have better handling on a traditional road configuration if you want to incorporate adjustments, like a nice set of carbon rim wheels that could help you climb the steep hills, or a tiny pair of aero bars can have you dialed in for the very limited aero moments. So I pretty much decided that I'm not going to use my triathlon bike for the race anymore. I was kind of on the fence about it already because I know when I did the Santa Barbara triathlon, it definitely did not help me out at all. And I kind of almost wish that I had used my gravel bike instead of the triathlon bike. But for this race, it seems like there's no benefit whatsoever to the aero bike. So I'm just going to use my gravel bike that I have, which I think is going to help me out a lot more. And I do have some attachable aero bars that I used in the first triathlon I did because I used my gravel bike in the first triathlon that I did. So I might hook those on just to have them to sit in, kind of more for comfort and just a little bit of aero gains that I'll get from it. But I think that's what I've decided to do for the bike portion. And they're even saying, as a pro tip, zip tie hand warmers to your handlebars when you set up your transition area on race morning to keep your hands warm during the ride. So they're obviously expecting this to be a very cold event. And I am not looking forward to the cold hands because I've definitely ridden around in San Francisco like that before. I might take advantage of this hand warmer tip, to be honest. Then they go more in detail about the bike. So there's 1,200 feet of climbing and descending on the bike course, and 10 left-hand turns and 10 right-hand turns over the 18 miles. So really, you're not getting a lot of aero benefit because you're not getting a lot of it when you're going uphill. You don't have as much aero resistance. A lot of that is from gravity, so it's frictional resistance, which an aero bike does not help you with. And then you also have 20 turns total. So like I said in my earlier video, it is kind of hard to turn on the triathlon bike, and I am much better at that on my gravel bike. So I think I'm going to get a lot of benefit actually from using the gravel bike as opposed to the triathlon bike in this race in particular. And a general update on how I'm doing in training. Training is going pretty well overall. I would say that the running training is lagging behind the bike and swim training, which I have been focusing very heavily on the swim training for this event and kind of putting biking and running on the back burner, which does make sense. I'm not really too worried about the run because worst case scenario, I can just suffer through it. Whereas if I do really poorly in the swim, I could, end up not even making it to the shore for one thing, and also just being completely gassed or like disheartened by the time I get on the bike. So I don't want that to happen. I'm less concerned about the run, but because of that, I am a little worried about how I'm going to do in the run at this point. So I might kind of pick up my training on that. Speaking of the run, let's get into that. So, a little bit about my background in running. It's pretty limited, but it is the thing that I've been doing the most out of the three events, basically. So, over the last few years, I've done a couple like little 5Ks here and there, or obstacle course runs like Spartan Race or Savage Race or things like that. I did complete the Spartan Trifecta year before last, which means that I did three distances in the Spartan Race. I did the 5K, the 10K, and the 21K or half marathon. And my fastest time running is a 5K that I did in just under 30 minutes. So, not very impressive, running background. And then at the end of last year, I did do a 21K Spartan trail race in Marin. And I am doing the 50K version of that same race this year at the end of the year. So, not a whole lot of training background as far as running goes. Even though I have been doing that significantly longer than biking or swimming, I haven't really been training to run per se. I was just kind of, running for general cardio or whatever. I didn't have like specific threshold runs or speed training or long distance training or anything like that that I was doing. I was just getting out and running a couple miles every now and then, kind of sporadically. And I didn't really start training until about 3 or 4 years ago. I started using the Mapatone method of training, which the Maffetone method is a heart rate based method of running training. So essentially, you're running in a zone two cardio state for roughly 80% of your training. And I'm not going too in depth into the running training or the science or mechanics of running that I'm doing because, like I said, it's not that big of a deal for me in this race. And I am planning on possibly doing another prep video for the 50K that I'm doing at the end of the year, which is going to be very run intensive. So I will go much more in depth into that process if I do that video. Speaking in general, I am pretty conservative when it comes to run training because that is the most injury prone discipline in triathlon. If you think about the physical impact of each event, running is definitely the most impactful. Swimming, you're floating in a body of water. You have resistance from the water, but there's no ground resistance or anything like that. Like you're not hitting anything. And on the bike, you're mostly using your legs and sitting in a saddle the whole time. So it is more physically demanding than the swim, and you definitely can get injured on the bike, but usually that's from wrecks or severe overtraining. Like you get problems with your knees or maybe your hips from sitting in the saddle wrong or not having your bike adjusted right. But in the run, every single step that you take is impact. So it's just constant pounding over and over again on what is usually the concrete, because that's what we have mostly in Los Angeles. It's a lot of concrete around here. And if you run on trails or something like that with less impactful ground or ground that has more give to it, that's usually a little bit easier on the body. And if you have a good pair of training shoes, that usually reduces the impact also. But you can really only reduce it so much. You're going to be taking, impact damage, very, very small amount, but impact damage every time you take a step. And the faster or the harder that you run, the more impactful and the more damaging that is going to be. So, as I said, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to that training because I don't want to get injured. That's kind of my biggest concern. And now we'll get into the actual running portion of the training plan. As you can see, the running portion is pretty similar to the cycling and swimming portion. We have basically a speed workout every week and then a long, easy workout every week. And the speed workout and long workouts basically just increase every week up until the fourth week, and they drop back down and they increase again. So it follows the same general theory as the other two events. And for running, Ross likes to do hill sprints, which are pretty good for building up some speed and some strength in the quads, which I'm definitely going to need. I haven't been doing the hill reps for most of the training plan just because I didn't have any hills, but I did realize that the treadmill in my gym at the apartment can be raised, like it can put you on an incline. So I've been using that to do some hill reps for the last 2 weeks. So we'll see how that goes because I do have a Spartan trail race in Big Bear in 2 weeks. And that's a 10K with a lot of elevation. So that's going to help me with that also. And that race is going to be a good way of showing me kind of where I am run wise, because it is a 10K and it is a lot of hills. So I can kind of see how I'm doing and how I'm feeling on a hilly run course. So Ross's training plan has the hill sprints and then 15 minutes running at 80% of your max heart rate, which I've just been doing a threshold run for that portion. And a threshold run is a pace that you can run usually for 20 minutes straight. So it's whatever pace you can maintain for 20 minutes. And that is what I do for that workout, because usually my heart rate is pretty high at that pace anyway. And I don't want to just kind of watch my heart rate the whole time. It's a lot easier to just run at a certain pace for me. So I'm just making that a little bit easier. And then we have these strength sessions also, which, like I said, I'm not doing too much strength wise on those. It's more just like kind of prehab and rehab and stretching and injury prevention. Then we have the long runs, which again increase each week. And these are supposed to be easy and off road. I don't really have off road to do. So I'm just trying to take them as easy as possible and not burn myself out on those runs and get some good time and some good miles in. As we can see on the fourth week, it changes up a little bit. So we have the brisk strides at a 5K pace for this one. And then the length on the long run gets dropped down a little bit. Same thing for week 8. We just have those strides at a 5K pace, and the length gets dropped down on the run a little bit again. But then after that, it switches up a little bit. So I'm currently finishing up week 7 right now, and I'll be starting week 8 next week. And then we start crunch time. We are in the last 4 weeks before the prep, essentially, which is when I'm really getting tuned up for the race itself. So as you can see here, we've increased the time of the hill reps, and then we've changed those threshold runs to a 2 by 5 minute run at 85 to 90% of your max heart rate. So that's essentially me almost sprinting for 5 minutes straight. So that's going to be a really intense run workout, and hopefully that's going to make me faster, because it's going to get my body used to running at that faster pace and have my body not be so angry about me forcing it to run that fast, basically, because I kind of think of these training plans as teaching your body that it's okay to do things that it's uncomfortable doing, because it is capable of those things, but it's going to scream, no, I don't like that, no, that hurts, please stop doing that. But you have to be able to kind of get through that part and tell your body, no, we can do this, we just have to push through it, which makes it pretty mentally tough, which is probably an episode I'm going to do on triathlon, is just the mental aspect of the training. But anyway, we'll get back to the training plan for now. And then the run, this says run on terrain similar to the race route, which will be on kind of a hilly road section. So I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing pretty much for the long runs. And then we'll be in the last 2 weeks, the final countdown. So week 11, we are going to be doing 10 30-second hill reps and then 15 minutes running at that 85 to 90% max heart rate. So basically 15 minutes of pure hell. Oh, and I did forget to mention that at the end of the cycling workouts on Thursday, the speed cycling workouts, we'll be going straight into a run. So as you can see here, 15 minutes run off the bike, and that's called a brick workout. So it's a bike to run, and that trains you specifically for the race, because in the race, obviously, you have to get straight off your bike and pretty much start running immediately. And you might not think that's a problem until you do it the first time. Because when you're cycling really hard for 18 miles straight or something like that, your legs get really kind of jello-y when you first hop off the bike. So you have to be used to that kind of weird, like almost sea leg feeling, but it's like getting off the bike. So maybe bike legs, basically, and pushing through that to get the run started. Then we are in the last week of the prep race week. And as you can see, this week is very different than the rest of the training sessions. There's more rest built into it. And then for the run part, it's very low. So it's just 5 minutes at goal race pace and then 15 minutes of easy jogging. And that's on the same day that I'm doing my cycle. So it's basically a brick workout. And the same thing on Saturday, the day before the race. And that's just 5 minutes of easy pace straight off the bike. So we're really kind of toning it down this week, giving the body a lot of rest so that hopefully when I go into the race, I'm still very tuned up from the 11 to 12 weeks of training that I've been doing, but I've been taking it easy and tapering off up to the race. So hopefully my energy stores have built up a lot more by this point, and I'll have a really good race. That brings us to the end of the running portion of the Escape from Alcatraz training vlog. I hope you enjoyed this section. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them. And like I said, if I do that vlog on my prep for the 50K, I'll go a lot more in depth into running training and mechanics and the science behind running training. See you next time. And then we'll be in the last 2 weeks, the final countdown.